Misty COPSY was born in 1978 to Diana Smith and Buck COPSY. Her parents were already drifting apart, and shortly after her birth, they separated for good. So, from the start, it was mostly just Misty and her mom. They lived in a quiet mobile home community called Green Meadows in Puyallup, Washington. And despite the challenges, Misty was a bright, athletic, and well-liked teenager. She played softball, basketball, volleyball, and excelled in school. But most of all, Misty was known for her charisma. She had one of those magnetic personalities that drew people in. In 1992, Diana moved them to Spanaway, hoping to give Misty a better life. It was just a short drive from South Hill. But for Misty, it was a new world, new school, fewer friends, and most nights, Misty was home alone while her mum worked overnight as a caregiver. But they were close, and that bond would be put to the test on the night of September 17th, 1992. That evening, Misty begged her mom to let her go to the Puyallup Fair without supervision. She'd planned to go with her friend Trina Breard. But Diana had one concern: transportation. Since Diana would be working late, Misty had no guaranteed way back home. Still, Misty insisted, and to help her get permission, Diana told a little lie. She told Trina's parents she'd be driving both girls home, even though she knew she wouldn't. That night, Misty slipped into a pair of oversized stone-washed jeans borrowed from her mom, a navy blue sweatshirt, and brown suede shoes. As she crossed the street toward the fairgrounds around 8:40 p.m., Diana watched from the doorway, and something about how small Misty looked in those baggy clothes stuck with her. At the fair, Misty and Trina had fun until they realized they had missed the last bus home. Misty called her mum from a payphone and mentioned a backup plan. She might be able to get a ride from Reuben Schmidt, an 18-year-old neighbor, but Diana had a bad feeling. She'd overheard Reuben say something inappropriate to Misty once, and it stuck with her. She warned her daughter, "Don't get in a car with him." After that call, Misty was on her own. Trina got picked up by her 23-year-old boyfriend, but Misty didn't feel comfortable going with them, so she declined the ride and decided to walk 8 miles, alone, in the dark. Somewhere between 9:20 and 10 p.m., a bus driver saw Misty walking near Meridian Avenue. He told her buses were done for the night. And then, Misty disappeared. Just like that. Diana called the police the very next morning, but instead of launching a search, they told her Misty had run away. Why? Because of her age. Because of Diana's past. Because they didn't see Misty for who she really was. They didn't even file a proper report right away. And then, 2 classmates falsely claimed they saw or heard from Misty. Police ran with it, removed her from the National Missing Persons database, and told the media she had been found. She hadn't. Her mother was left to investigate her own daughter's disappearance. In December, 3 months later, police finally admitted that Misty may have been abducted. By then, it was almost too late. Leads had dried up, suspects had moved on, and trust in law enforcement had evaporated. Trina's story changed. Reuben Schmidt, the guy Misty had mentioned on the phone, gave a strange account. He claimed he blacked out that night and couldn't remember what happened after talking to Misty. When asked directly if he could have harmed her during one of those blackouts, he answered, "I don't know." Then came a twist. A local amateur sleuth named Corey Bober, obsessed with unsolved cases, stepped in. He believed Misty was one of several victims tied to the same area near Highway 410. On February 7th, 1993, after months of dead ends, Corey led a search party to a wooded area near Mud Mountain Dam. And there, they found Misty's clothes. Weathered jeans, a sock, a toothbrush, no blood. But the items had been deliberately placed. DNA from an unknown male was found on the jeans, and red paint chips, possibly from a vehicle, were discovered. But like much of the evidence in this case, those items were eventually lost by police. To this day, Misty COPSY's disappearance remains unsolved. Diana never stopped fighting for answers, and Misty has never been forgotten. If you have any information about the disappearance of Misty COPSY, please contact local authorities, share her story, keep her name alive, because someone out there knows the truth. Hildegard Hendrickson. A name once known in academic circles and among mushroom hunting enthusiasts throughout the Pacific Northwest. But on June 8, 2013, this brilliant 79-year-old woman, a retired professor, an experienced forager, vanished without a trace. That morning, Hildegard set off alone on a familiar kind of journey. She left her home in Seattle, driving her light green 2012 Ford Focus toward the Minnow Creek trailhead near Lake Wenatchee in Washington state. She was headed to a burn area, scorched by wildfire just a year earlier, now rich with the delicate, elusive morel mushrooms she loved to hunt. This wasn't unusual. In fact, it was her passion. Born in 1934 in Yugoslavia to a family of German descent, Hildegard's early life was marked by war and displacement. As a child, she fled with her family when Russian forces advanced during World War II. They sought safety in Austria, and from there, she built a new life. Years later, she made the bold move to America, settling in Seattle, where she pursued higher education with fierce determination. She earned 3 degrees from the University of Washington. In 1967, she joined the faculty at Seattle University, where she would go on to teach for nearly 3 decades. But it was outside the classroom, in the forests, where she truly came alive. Her love for mycology, the study of fungi, was sparked in the 1970s during a simple outing with her husband and a neighbor. From that moment on, mushrooms weren't just a hobby, they were a lifelong calling. She led field trips, she mentored newcomers, she taught others how to forage safely. Even in her late 70s, she was still out there, navigating rugged terrain, basket in hand, eyes scanning the forest floor. So when she arrived at that trailhead on June 8th, it was business as usual. That day, she briefly spoke with a man, Dr. Anthony Okos, a cardiologist, who warned her that the trail was steep. He worried it might be too challenging for her, but Hildegard was strong. Those who knew her said she was fit, active, and more than capable. She wore a colorful shirt, a tan vest with pockets, a straw hat, and carried a silver basket and a blue hiking pole. And at around 1:30 p.m., 2 people, including a Forest Service ranger, saw her in the woods, cheerfully picking mushrooms just off the trail. That was the last time anyone saw Hildegard Hendrickson alive. Her car, left unlocked with the windows slightly cracked, sat untouched. She never returned. Because she lived alone, her absence wasn't immediately reported. It wasn't until June 11th, 3 days later, that another mushroom hunter noticed something strange. That same green Ford Focus, parked in the same spot for days. When he peered inside, he found a purse with ID. It was Hildegard's. The alarm was raised. Authorities responded that evening. Search teams mobilized. Helicopters flew overhead. K9 units scoured the woods. Hildegard's son, Andrew, joined the effort. A set of footprints, possibly hers, was found early in the search, sparking hope. But hope began to fade. The terrain was harsh. Some areas were cleared by fire, but others were dense, difficult to search. Still, rescuers pushed on, combing through high-probability zones again and again. They found a plastic water bottle, nearly new, but no other clues. By day 6, more than 2,500 man-hours had gone into the search. Every inch within half a mile of her car had been scoured, some places up to 8 times, and yet nothing. On June 16th, the official search was suspended. Flyers were posted. Her face, her name, spread through local communities, but no trace of Hildegard was ever found. December 17th, 1962. It began as an ordinary winter day in Vineland, New Jersey. But for one family, it would become a date forever etched in memory, especially the Jones family. That morning started routinely enough. William Ebenezer Jones Sr., Billy's father, left early for work at the New York Shipbuilding Company in Camden, about 30 minutes away. Evelyn Jones, Billy's mother, had a busy day planned with her children. She bundled up 3-year-old Billy and his younger sister Jill, who was just about 2, for a series of errands. Their first stop, the bank. Then, a quick trip to get Billy a haircut. When they got home, both kids were eager to play outside, despite the chilly December air. Billy was a lively boy, bright blue eyes, blondish brown hair. That day, he wore a light blue-gray snowsuit with a navy collar and distinctive silver buttons. On his feet, tan high-top sneakers with yellow laces, a detail his mother would later recall with painful clarity. Before heading outside, Evelyn handed Billy a dime. "Keep this in your pocket," she told him. At around 11:45 a.m., a neighbor saw Billy playing outside, alone. Concerned, the neighbor suggested he return home. That would be the last confirmed sighting of Billy Jones. Meanwhile, Evelyn was inside, dividing her attention between household chores and glancing out the kitchen window to check on the kids. Their 2 family dogs were outside too. At one point, Evelyn stepped away to tend to her youngest son in another room, and in that brief moment, everything changed. At around 1 p.m., there was a knock at the door. Evelyn opened it. There stood Jill, alone. In her tiny hands, she held a plastic potted poinsettia, a strange sight. But it was what she said next that chilled Evelyn to her core. When asked, "Where's Billy?" Jill answered, "The boogeyman took him." The search began around 2 p.m., about an hour after Evelyn realized Billy was missing. There was hope at first that maybe he'd just wandered off, but that delay in calling police would later be seen as crucial, lost time. Still, once alerted, the Vineland police sprang into action, quickly mobilizing every available resource. Within hours, the search exploded. Over 500 people, some from as far as Philadelphia, poured into Vineland to help. Even Vineland High School allowed students to skip school and join the effort. Searchers combed through woods, swamplands, and neighborhoods, on foot, by air, and by boat. The New Jersey National Guard joined in, bringing extra manpower and gear. A key area of focus, the Palace of Depression, an old abandoned tourist attraction near the Jones home. Investigators searched it from top to bottom. They even dug up parts of the property, but found nothing. Mayor Henry Garton took to the radio, issuing a public plea for any information. But the trail was cold. That plastic poinsettia Jill held. At first, it seemed like a potential clue. Witnesses said someone had been selling plastic flowers in the neighborhood that morning. Could a flower vendor be involved? Eventually, that lead fizzled. Investigators discovered the flower had been taken from a neighbor's trash, passed from kid to kid. Another strange piece. The family's basset hound, Baby Cakes, had vanished with Billy. Later, the dog was found, soaking wet, just a short distance away. Had Billy fallen into a body of water? Had the dog tried to save him? Maybe Billy had chased the dog. Search teams scoured nearby creeks and ponds like Little Robin Branch, but again, nothing. Another theory emerged, that Billy might have somehow ended up in the trash. Investigators learned that garbage collection had taken place between 1:30 and 2 p.m. that day. Had Billy crawled into a bin? Had someone placed him there? The trash collectors were questioned and insisted they saw nothing unusual. Still, The authorities took no chances. They searched the landfill and found nothing. Desperate for answers, the Jones family turned to psychics. One psychic claimed Billy had been taken by a man whose wife had suffered a breakdown after losing her own toddler. The theory: Billy was now being raised in an Amish community in Pennsylvania, but investigators were skeptical. If Billy had survived, wouldn't he eventually remember who he was? 2 years later, in 1964, another psychic presented a darker theory. They claimed Billy had been accidentally struck and killed, and the panicked individual had buried him nearby. The psychic even gave a description of the man and his car. Still, no evidence, no arrest. Years later, Jill, the little girl who once held that poinsettia, underwent hypnosis in hopes of unlocking new memories, and what she recalled was chilling. She described holding Billy's hand as they witnessed two men fighting near a burning oil drum at the Palace of Depression. She remembered running away, eventually seeing the door to her house. This memory reignited suspicion that something terrible might have happened there. But still, nothing could be proven. In 2009, Detective Christian Kirschner reopened the case. With the help of the FBI, age-progressed images of Billy were released, showing what he might look like today. Jill submitted her DNA to national databases, hoping for a match. As of January 2025, the case remains unsolved. It stands as one of the oldest missing child cases in New Jersey for a child under the age of 5. Despite the years, advances in forensic science and the power of social media continue to breathe life into the search for answers, and the hope remains that one day, someone, somewhere, will come forward, and the truth of what happened to little Billy Jones will finally come to light. Do you remember anything about that day in 1962? Even the smallest memory can make the biggest difference. If you know something, say something, because for the Jones family, the story isn't over yet. She was just 14, a child, a bright, beautiful native girl with her whole life ahead of her. But in early 2025, Emily Pike vanished from the streets of Mesa, Arizona, and was found weeks later in a state no human being should ever be found. Emily Pike was a member of the San Carlos Apache tribe. She had dreams of going to college. She loved to draw. She loved her mom, her siblings. Her life, though difficult at times, was filled with promise. But in January 2025, her future was stolen. Emily had been placed in a group home in Mesa, Arizona, run by Sacred Journey Inc., by the tribe's social services department. What led to her placement there hasn't been disclosed publicly. Her uncle, Allred Pike Jr., believed she may have been trying to return to the reservation where her mother lived. The group home had rules. When residents left, staff were supposed to know who they were going with, where they were going, and when they'd return. "You're not going to go to your friend's house and there's no parents there," said a program director. "We need to meet these people, realize they're real individuals, not someone you're making up." But Emily didn't go through the front door. On the night of January 27th, she reportedly snuck out her bedroom window. A report was filed, but nothing more was seen or heard of her until it was too late. 18 days later, on February 14th, 2025, a grim discovery was made near Globe, Arizona, almost 100 miles from the group home. Emily's remains were found in black plastic trash bags, discarded in a remote stretch of Gila County scrubland. She had been dismembered. Her hands and legs were missing. Her face and head showed signs of trauma.
Cellular analysis, looking not only at her devices, but what cell phones might have been in the area where she was found and in the area where she went missing. Is there something in common there? that could identify a single person.
They'll also be looking for clues from behavior or personality traits of the killer, especially at the crime scene. Did the killer leave behind a signature or something that would have meant something to them? Is there a reason they took Emily's hands and arms?
She may have fought back. She may have scratched the person or people who attacked her, and therefore their DNA might be under her fingernails, and they were possibly aware of that, trying to prevent that from being discovered. A sexual sadist would commit those types of crimes either because of the pleasure they derive from it, or again, to try to cover up what they've done.
Her being deceased is one thing, her uncle said, but the way that she was found was another thing. It's hard to comprehend that someone would do such a thing to a 14-year-old girl. The Gila County Sheriff's Office, San Carlos Apache Tribal Police, and the Bureau of Indian Affairs immediately launched a homicide investigation. 3 suspects were quickly identified, but no one has been arrested. The San Carlos Apache tribe offered a $75,000 reward for information leading not just to an arrest, but to a conviction. Emily's death triggered grief that rippled across Arizona. Vigils were held in Mesa and on the San Carlos Reservation. At one, drums echoed into the night as elders and youth stood side by side, candles flickering in the desert wind. They said her name, Emily Pike, out loud and with pain.
Emily was a spark, and she definitely sparked the entire world, and now the world is on fire because of Emily.
And she ran off, and none of us really knew that she ran off until some of us seen the missing person report of her, or they finally told our grandma. And then a month later, they come down to our house and they tell us that she's gone, that she's no longer with us.
My heart is hurting. I can't handle it. Her life was taken too soon. It's hard for me. Hard for me. Imagine what happened to her.
A cry for justice in a country where Indigenous girls and women disappear far too often, their cases dismissed or ignored. And Emily's death also raised deeper questions. Why was she placed in that group home to begin with? Had her previous escape attempts been taken seriously? Could more have been done to protect her? The Arizona Department of Child Safety opened a licensing inquiry into Sacred Journey, Inc., looking at how Emily's care was handled. Her family wants answers. Her community wants change. But most of all, they want justice. Allred Pike Jr. says he wants people to remember who Emily really was. A young girl who loved to draw, who loved her siblings, who had college dreams and a future waiting for her. Even though life was difficult at times, she had goals, a full life ahead of her, and someone ended that. Today, in April 2025, the case remains active. Investigators say there are 3 suspects, but still no arrests, no charges. Law enforcement is still urging anyone with information to come forward. If you know anything at all, about what happened to Emily Pike, call the Gila County Sheriff's Office or reach out to the San Carlos Apache Police. Your voice could bring justice to a girl who had hers taken away. Emily Pike's death is more than a tragedy. It's a mirror held up to the failures of a system meant to protect. It's a story of grief, injustice, and hope that someone will speak. She mattered. She still matters, and her story isn't over. Some homes are remembered for their architecture, some for their history, and others for the horrors hidden in their soil. Fox Hollow Farm, nestled in the quiet suburb of Westfield, Indiana, is one such place. Behind its manicured lawns and perfectly trimmed hedges lies a terrifying legacy, one that remains unresolved even today. This is the chilling story of Herbert Baumeister, a suspected serial killer, and the renewed 2025 investigation that's sending shockwaves across America. Herbert Richard Baumeister looked like the picture of suburban success. Born in 1947, the eldest of 4 children, raised in Indianapolis, a bright, curious boy. But as he grew older, something began to change. Erratic behavior, disturbing interests. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia, but was never treated. Those early warning signs would cast a long, dark shadow over the rest of his life. In the 1980s and early 90s, Baumeister built a seemingly normal life. He ran the Save-A-Lot thrift store chain, was married to Julie, and lived with their 3 children in a sprawling estate known as Fox Hollow Farm, 18 acres of private woodland just outside Indianapolis. But while Herb was building a life of wealth and respectability, something far more sinister was happening in the shadows. Young gay men began to vanish from Indianapolis. Many were last seen at local gay bars. The community feared the worst, a predator among them. But back then, in a less accepting time, many of the cases were dismissed. Police assumed they were runaways, but one brave man, Tony Harris, escaped Herb's clutches and gave police the breakthrough they needed. In 1994, a horrifying discovery. Baumeister's 13-year-old son, Eric, stumbled upon a human skull in their backyard. Julie, who had already grown suspicious of her husband's behavior, contacted authorities. What they found on the property was unimaginable. Over 10,000 bone fragments, charred and shattered, scattered across the woods. At least 11 bodies, all young men, all believed to have been lured to their deaths. But before police could arrest him, Baumeister fled. He crossed the border into Canada, and in July of 1996, he took his own life at Pinery Provincial Park. A gunshot to the head, a suicide note, but no confession. For years, the case went cold. The remains, too fragmented to identify, sat in evidence lockers. Only 8 victims could be named with the tools of the 90s, but then came a breakthrough. In 2022, Coroner Jeff Jellison launched a renewed effort using forensic genetic genealogy. DNA was carefully extracted from bone fragments and compared to databases and family submissions. And now, in 2025, victims are finally being given names. Alan Livingston, missing since 1993, identified through DNA from his mother. Manuel Resendez, also missing in 93, confirmed through family samples. Jeffrey A. Jones, another 1993 victim, matched through advanced genealogy. So far, 13 victims have been positively identified. But investigators believe Baumeister may have killed 25 or more. And the work isn't over. The Indiana State Police, the FBI, and volunteer genealogists continue to work day and night. They're urging families of missing men, especially from the Midwest during the 80s and 90s, to come forward and submit DNA. Because even decades later, there's still hope for answers. Baumeister lived a double life. On the surface, a devoted husband and businessman, but in private, a deeply closeted man who visited gay bars under aliases. Experts believe he struggled with internal conflict, repression, and possibly sociopathic tendencies. A textbook example of how charm and social respectability can hide monstrous darkness. Today, Fox Hollow Farm is infamous. New owners report paranormal activity. It's become a hotspot for ghost hunters, true crime fans, and those drawn to tragedy. In 2025, Hulu released a gripping docuseries, The Fox Hollow Murders, Playground of a Serial Killer, exploring the case, the victims, and the unanswered questions that still haunt the estate. The story of Herbert Baumeister is more than a tale of horror. It's a story about forgotten victims finally being heard, about the power of modern science, and the determination of investigators who refuse to give up. If you or someone you know had a loved one go missing in Indiana or the Midwest during the 1980s or 90s, reach out to the Indiana State Police. Your DNA could help close a chapter in this haunting story. Cardiff, Wales, April 2025. A woman leaves work like any other day. She gets into her car, drives off, and vanishes without a trace. Within a week, her body is found, The suspects? A man from Pennylan and a woman from London's White City estate. This is the chilling case of PARIA VEISI, a woman whose life ended too soon and under mysterious, deeply disturbing circumstances. Let's explore what happened and where the case stands today. PARIA VEISI was 37 years old. She lived and worked in Cardiff, the capital of Wales. Described by colleagues as reliable, soft-spoken, and deeply committed to her work, PARIA lived a quiet life. She had no known enemies, and her routine was well established. She worked in the Canton area of Cardiff, an urban hub of businesses, cafes, and residential flats. PARIA wasn't famous. She wasn't on social media much. She was just a woman trying to live her life peacefully, until everything changed on the afternoon of April 12th, 2025. It was a Friday, April 12th. Just after 3 p.m., CCTV footage shows PARIA leaving her workplace in Canton. She's wearing a red top, black pants with zips at the bottom, and white sneakers. She carries a small handbag, nothing unusual. She walks out calmly and gets into her car, a black Mercedes-Benz GLC 220. But then, nothing. PARIA never returned home. She never contacted anyone. Her phone went silent. That night, she was reported missing. South Wales police launched an immediate search operation. Given that PARIA was considered responsible and punctual, her sudden disappearance was classified as high risk. Investigators began combing through CCTV footage, knocking on doors, and tracing her car's movements. Days passed with no sign of her, until April 15th, when her vehicle was found abandoned on Dorchester Avenue in Pennylan, an upscale neighborhood in the eastern part of Cardiff. The car was locked. There were no visible signs of a struggle, but something felt wrong. Very wrong. On April 19th, exactly 1 week after PARIA vanished, police made a horrifying discovery. At an address in Pennylan, not far from where the car was found, officers recovered a body. That body was confirmed to be PARIA VEISI. Her death was not natural. The police immediately opened a murder investigation. Following the discovery, 2 suspects were formally charged. A 41-year-old man from Pennylan, Cardiff, was charged with murder, preventing the lawful and decent burial of a body, assault occasioning actual bodily harm, ABH. A 48-year-old woman from Australia Road, White City Estate in West London, was charged with preventing the lawful and decent burial of a dead body, conspiring to pervert the course of justice. These charges reveal a deeply disturbing effort not only to conceal a crime, but to distort the justice system in the process. Both suspects were remanded in custody following their appearance at Cardiff Magistrates Court on April 19th. The case is now moving forward through the Welsh legal system. The suspects are scheduled to appear at Cardiff Crown Court on April 22nd, 2025. The investigation, led by South Wales Police's major crime team, continues to explore the nature of PARIA's relationship with the suspects and what led to this horrifying outcome. A possible motive has not yet been made public. Detective Chief Inspector Matt Powell issued a statement. This is a deeply upsetting and tragic case. Our thoughts are with PARIA's family at this incredibly difficult time. We are continuing our investigation with care and sensitivity. Community members held a small vigil for PARIA. Flowers and candles were placed near her workplace in Canton as a tribute to a life cut tragically short. There's still so much we don't know. How did PARIA know the suspects? What was she doing in Pennylan? Was this a planned murder or a situation that escalated? Police continue to appeal for anyone with dashcam or CCTV footage from the Pennylan area between April 12th and April 15th to come forward. PARIA's story is a heartbreaking reminder that true crime doesn't only happen in headlines or big cities. It can unfold quietly in neighborhoods like Pennylan and with people who seem like anyone else. We hope justice will be served, and we hope her story won't be forgotten. If you have thoughts, tributes, or tips, leave them in the comments below. And if you know something that could help, contact South Wales Police. Until next time, stay aware, stay safe, and remember. Coventry, England, 1972. A teenage girl walks out into the city and disappears. For over 5 decades, no one knew what happened to her. No goodbyes, no note. Just a 16-year-old girl, gone. Her name was Sheila Fox. At the time, Sheila lived with her parents in Coventry. She was known to be quiet, thoughtful, and a bit shy, the kind of girl who didn't cause trouble. So when she vanished, without warning, it shocked everyone. Her family was devastated. Police launched a search. But the 1970s didn't have today's tools. No digital trail, no CCTV, just questions, endless questions. Over the years, the theories piled up. Had Sheila run away with someone? Was she hurt? Or worse? Had she simply chosen a new life, far from everything she knew? But no trace of her was ever found. And slowly, the world moved on. But her family, they never stopped hoping. Fast forward to 2025. The West Midlands Police cold case team decided to take a fresh look. They had new tech and new ways to reach people. So, they posted a photo, a black and white image of Sheila, taken before she vanished. It wasn't high quality, but it was enough to stir something. Within hours, the tips started coming in. One tip led them to a quiet town, to a woman in her late 60s, living under a different name. And after careful checks, DNA, and multiple interviews, they confirmed it. Sheila Fox had been found, alive. The news stunned the public. But for Sheila's family, those still living, it was a miracle. A detective on the case, D.S. Jenna Shaw, said, "We're absolutely delighted to have found Sheila after more than 5 decades. Every missing person has a story. Their loved ones deserve answers. Now, the reasons for her disappearance, those are personal, and they remain private. But one thing is certain, Sheila Fox chose to step away from her old life, and somehow, she made it through." Her story reminds us that not every missing person case ends in tragedy. Sometimes, it ends in resilience, in choice, in survival. So if you ever see a face in a photo and feel a spark of recognition, don't ignore it, because your tip might bring someone home. This was the story of Sheila Fox, and after more than 50 years, she's finally been found. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you want more real stories that matter. Until next time, stay aware, stay kind, and stay curious. Early 2025, South Dakota, Minnesota, a 35-year-old woman disappears without a warning, without a trace. Her name, Shalene Ball. And what happened to her still remains one of the most unsettling mysteries of the year. Shalene was someone who stayed in touch, kind-hearted, thoughtful, the kind of person who always responded to a message, always let people know where she was. But in January, something changed. Her family started noticing silence, no calls, no replies. And then, on February 26th, the last known communication. A text. Nothing out of the ordinary. But it would be the last anyone would hear from her. That silence has been deafening ever since. Law enforcement now believes Shalene might not be missing by choice. In fact, they think she could be held against her will. Investigators narrowed the search to West Street, Paul and South Street Paul in Minnesota. And they're focusing on a vehicle, a 2007 white Dodge Caravan. But that car hasn't been seen. And neither has Shalene, despite search teams, media coverage, and a family that refuses to give up hope. there are still no solid leads. Her loved ones have been speaking out, publicly and passionately. One relative shared on Facebook, "We know someone out there knows something. Please, just come forward. We need her home." But what makes this case even more disturbing is that there's been no sign of a struggle, no witnesses, no camera footage, just quiet and disappearance. Authorities haven't released suspect names, but they're treating this as high risk. If you live in Dakota County or anywhere near Ramsey County, and you've seen anything, even a car parked where it shouldn't be, you might have the one clue that breaks this case open. Because Shalene Ball isn't just another face in a missing person flyer. She's a real woman with a family, a life, and a future worth fighting for. Her story reminds us, not every disappearance ends in violence, but silence can be just as terrifying. So, if you know anything at all, call your local police or leave an anonymous tip with Crime Stoppers. The truth matters, Shalene matters, and someone, somewhere, knows what happened. This has been the story of Shalene Ball. The search continues, and we will not stop asking questions until she's found or until we finally get answers. Stay aware, stay safe, and remember, behind every mystery, there's a human life.